Welcome back to the Pets App podcast. I'm joined today by Ebony Escalona, a rare breed on the Pets App podcast, an equine vet. She is the founder of Vets Stay Go Diversify, an international community of veterinary professionals who support each other in pursuing fulfilling careers. Welcome, Ebony.
Oh, thanks for having me, Thom.
Of course, absolute pleasure. So I gave a very brief introduction there, but I often like to start these by just asking the guests to give a sort of outline of their career to date, how they got here.
Yeah, sure. Mine's a very, very squiggly one, but I guess you could sum me up now as, an equine vet, an educator, and an entrepreneur of sorts. So I've been qualified now 11 years and have worked in a variety of career mediums from general practice through to referral hospital. I've done research and done a PhD at Imperial looking at the influence of gut health on whole animal health. I've worked in the international development sector for the Brook Action for working horses and donkeys around the world. Worked for a number of universities supporting their teaching, especially within non-clinical skills, and support organisations such as VDS in that as well. And then, like you say, founded Vets Stay Go Diversify, an online community there. So I really have a kind of, I suppose, a bit of a portfolio career, but I call myself a stay-versifier because I still do clinical work, but I also, diversify on the side. So I'm very much a champion of the general practice stay-versifier.
I love that. I love the idea of a squiggly line. And I think if you zoom in enough, if you get enough detail, everyone has a squiggly line of sorts, don't they? And sometimes I can be guilty of this, where you just construct a narrative that explains your story and it seems very linear, but it's never really that way. So on that note, I guess, what is Vet Stay Go Diversify? Where did the sort of seed of that idea come from?
Yeah, it's turned out to be a beast. It's got a world of its own now. So 4 years ago, actually, last week, I was, I was a few years out then, and so many of my peers and my bestest friends were feeling really dejected, lost, stuck, disillusioned, insert other negative emotion around their career. And I was so sad about it. And I didn't really get it because I'd always known that I had a veterinary degree, sure, but I had a science degree. So I was always very free and open-minded with the fact that there were lots of avenues that I could go and do my vetting in. And before I became a vet, I spent time working in music, television, and TV production. So I knew there was a world outside of veterinary. But I knew that my weird story wasn't going to resonate with everyone at all. And so I thought, what can I do? And I searched around to try and find groups that were kind of celebrating and championing the other stuff that you can do with a vet degree, and I couldn't really find it. So I thought, well, I was a bit drunk, and I thought, I'll just start a Facebook group. And, I just expected, I just wanted to help a handful of my friends. And, within 4 years, we've gone to 15,000 with no marketing whatsoever. So incredible. It's a space, I guess, where we can shine a light on all the different career paths, really smash that stigma that, if you're not working in a clinic, then you're not a real vet, which is absolute BS. We're all real vets, that the GP practitioner can't do the vaccine without the researchers, doesn't have the evidence base without, the people, can't, the public health, that, it's a place where we can kind of learn together and feel less alone. So I think a lot of us feel quite isolated, both geographically and mentally, when it comes to our identity as a vet and what that brings to us. So that's kind of how it started.
It is a real source of inspiration. It's just such a cool community, because there are some people that are all in this career that you never thought was even a job. You didn't know it existed. And then there are other people. I saw one, I can't remember their name, so I apologize, but they were decorating tables in just the most amazingly intricate way. And that was just their sort of hobby or side hustle or something like that. And you're just like, wow, just so many different ways to be a vet. It's really cool.
Yeah, And nurses as well. So we have vet nurses and students. So I'm really keen to encourage that it is, the veterinary professionals there, not just the vets. And yeah, it's incredible
Definitely.
seeing what people do.
So, but there is this anxiety around a sort of exodus from, maybe not from the profession, but from general practice. As you say, you noticed the sort of people facing maybe burnout or compassion fatigue, or just not finding the balance that they hoped they could find in the job that they were doing then. What do you think are the main sort of push factors pushing people out of clinical practice?
Good question. I think there are quite a few factors pushing people out. Some is about the individual. Some is about, the work environment, and some is about society at large. I think it's quite important as well that we don't just see this as a vet problem. This is something that's happening in many professions where there is a traditional strict focus on what that job looks like. If we go to think about the individual, I think so many of us have a preconception of what we think veterinary is. We often decide to be this veterinary professional age 6, and we cling on to these ideals that don't necessarily serve us. For instance, in my case, my 6-year-old ideals don't serve me at 37. But how often do I check in with them to check that I'm on that right path? So I think clarity of what good looks like, and having that really personalized and specific to you is something that we don't do enough of. So I think the first thing is clarity of the individual. And if you don't have that, then how can you match up with the role? I see too many square pegs in round holes. And it's not necessarily the job is bad or the individual is bad, you just got the wrong person in the wrong place. And I think that's so key in clinical work. A clinic that works for me might not work for you, Thom, and vice versa. So I think the individual piece is really important. And I think there's a lot of good reflection we can do. And then the environment piece, which is, I suppose, where the burnout comes from, is, sometimes our practices are set up that they don't support that team, they don't support that individual. And it's not often because someone is malicious or intending to do it that way. It's just that practice culture has evolved in such a way, time constraints, rotas, owners, pressures, and there hasn't been time to come up to breathe and go, hang on, let's figure this out and move this round. And I think COVID has done that, which is good in some ways. And I think, applications like Pets App have done that, allow people to actually think, how can I work differently that makes my team want to stay, because they can thrive in this environment and they're not being pushed to their limits and working, stupid hours without breaks. I still find that very odd that, how people can't have a break in a day that is generally structured, and unless you're working in a fully emergency clinic, there should always be space. And then thirdly, that societal piece. I think they're three main. You could drill down loads into the detail of each of those three, but broadly speaking, I think that's it.
Is this a new phenomenon, or are these new phenomena? Because it doesn't sound like it. So why has it it seems to have percolated to the surface? And in part, that's going to be the work that you and others have been doing. Is it a fact of sort of having permission to have these sorts of conversations? Is that the change that's happened?
Yeah, potentially. And again, the societal piece, because we now live in a world where we want things yesterday. We now live in a world where there are opportunities and more options, and sometimes that's a bad thing. If life is laid out for you simply in a linear fashion, where success is you go to university, you get a good degree, you get one job, maybe two, you stay in there for life, you become a partner and an owner of that, and you continue through. Those kind of narratives, sure, they still exist. Do not get me wrong. I have friends who are on that wonderful path, but that's not true of everyone anymore. And I think it's actually quite common now that the average person is actually going to have about 7 careers in a lifetime, let alone 7 jobs. And if I think about myself, I'm already halfway there for the different types of careers I've had, and I'm only halfway through my working life. So yes, I think society. At least
halfway there, yeah. Yeah.
I think society and the expectations of what success and career and family life look like has changed, and so. Yeah, I think it's quite an acute lens if you take veterinary, but it also happens elsewhere. And I was thinking, maybe as well the types of professionals and people that we're encouraging to come into the profession. Are we supporting the right expectations as well, from undergrad through to that transition, through to that graduate, through to the options? I'm not sure. And as you know, the state of play of veterinary in terms of how practices are managed and who owns them and how they're run, everything is changing.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I also know from my own time at university, I think we had 2 lectures on business, right? And they were really engaging, really exciting lectures, at least I thought so, delivered by a friend of mine and a bit of a mentor, Garrett Turley. But people gradually sort of faded out of the lecture hall, and they almost saw attending those lectures as a betrayal of their aspiration to be a vet. Well, I'm not interested in this. My interest is in serving patients. And I think we do need this. And what I love about Vet Stay Go Diversify is it broadens the interpretation of how you can have an impact in serving your passion around advancing animal welfare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the same is true. I really like what you say there about the business skills. And I can't even remember having any at Liverpool, but that was 11 years ago. And I know that people like Nottingham do some really good stuff now in the undergrad course. So shout out to them. It's also so true, Thom, of those non-clinical, or I hate to use the word soft skills because they're not. They're really, really bloody hard. And actually, I think if that acumen is not as well developed as your clinical or your orthopedic skills, then you're going to struggle in real life, because real life is anything but a paint by numbers affair that the undergrad teaches you. It's anything but, right, sit an exam, learn these facts, do this skill, get a pass. It's like this beautiful, messy cacophony of different people with different personalities, with different needs. And if you haven't mastered that emotional intelligence and those non-clinical skills, you're also going to want to leave because you'll find it really hard. It's like 90% of our job in practice is people. Yeah. I don't care whether you're an equine vet, farm vet, goat vet, exotics vet. You are primarily dealing with people. And if we don't master those skills of our interpersonal skills, then we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot before we've even started, haven't we, really?
Definitely. And if there's anyone to teach us about interpersonal skills, it's you, Ebony. I think you must be the best connected person in our profession. You seem to know everyone, and I think in no small part that's because it's always a joy to talk with you and catch up on what you're doing. But that must have been made harder over the last year for you as much as anyone else in terms of staying connected virtually. How has that been, and any tips on that?
Yeah, well, thank you. You're making me blush. And I always love connecting with you. And actually, this needs to get featured on the podcast because Thom is very much one of our Diversify Go role models within the community. And he recently spoke at the Global Veterinary Career Summit and the Big Student Careers Fair. And I've had so many students say, wow, Thom gives me hope that I can go and do these things and I'm still a real vet. So shout out back to you on that.
Thank you.
Virtual wise, God, it's been a double-edged sword, hasn't it? And I find this anyway with social media. I have a love-hate relationship, believe it or not, with the platform. I think the 3 things I've kind of struggled with is, and I'm sure you feel the same, I'm sure lots of listeners will feel the same. I feel like when I'm on screen, on camera, I have to give a lot more energy, and I feel far more depleted than if I was in a room or a practice or in a yard with someone. So I found that really interesting, that my energy levels were more depleted after a day of Zoom than it was being in an office or out on the road in clinics.
I think you're spot on there, that there is a certain performance art to it all.
So true. So true. And I've only just realized that after a year. Like, why am I so exhausted? And actually, it's affected my personal life, actually, because it's meant I've had less energy and time for the things that matter. So for me, it's been quite a lesson in that. The second challenge is I realized that my love language and the way I ideally like to operate is through tactile hugs and nudges, and that for me has been really, really tough. So they're 2 challenges: the energy and the fact that being close to someone and being able to hug them replenishes me, and I don't get that. But there's been some amazing things about it as well. I think we've given ourselves permission to network in a newfound way, and that there are no barriers to connecting with someone over a virtual coffee or to create mentorship opportunities, because everyone has had to essentially give permission to find and connect online. And I found that inspiring. And the Global Veterinary Careers Summit and the Big Student Careers Fair were real highlights. The real highlights of those things. What was that? It wasn't necessarily the talks that were being given. It was the connection that happened kind of online, away from the summit, that delegates have been like, I would never have had access to insert person like Thom or Sean or Gerardo or Katie or whoever. I'd never have access to them, and now I do. So I think that's been incredible. And and I think everyone's guard got put down, didn't it, over COVID, and everyone kind of had to take stock of what was important. And what I loved as well was that a lot of people were collaborating rather than competing. And that for me has been the most wonderful silver lining of the COVID journey, of people being willing to take risks, be a bit more innovative and collaborate over compete in that kind of virtual space. So they're kind of the wins, I think, for me.
I agree with you. I think there's a certain vulnerability that is introduced, which initially, like you're saying, can be draining, can be slightly scary, where the work has come home for many of us, not all of us, but it's kind of literally entered our homes, and we've had homeschooling to deal with. And so it's also provided this opportunity for empathy, and for people to say, hey, you can bring your whole self to work, and you're allowed to be who you are, and be accepted for that. So I think that there is that positive side to it.
Yeah, 100%. And I hope that when the world won't return. Well, I hope the world doesn't return to normal. I hope the world moves forward into a new normal, and I hope we can actually keep bringing in those permissions to connect in that, authentic and messy way. Because I think if we can drop that kind of perfectionistic, I must show this type of person at work, and then I can be this type of person at home, that doesn't serve anyone. And I think links back to the beginning of our conversation around, maybe why people leave, is because we put so much of our own our self-identity in our work, but actually we bring out some of the identity of us as mothers, daughters, sons, partners, climbers, dog owners, volunteers. We bring out those other parts and share them with our workforce, and share them with our clients, and share them with our collaborators, and share them with our competitors. Having that whole self is going to stand us in much better stead. If we have a bad day, then it's not because we're a bad vet, or we have a bad day. We've got those other parts of us kind of to nourish us. And I think, like you say, that being visible on camera to people has really helped.
Yeah, it's the same way that the hearing about people's career or diversification stories presents inspiration. If you can see that someone you admire and respect has the occasional bad day and things that aren't always going their way, it can, you're not looking at them and thinking failure. You're looking at them and thinking, wow, it's amazing with all they have going on that they hold it together so often. And then maybe you can have a bit of self-reflection and think, well, that's how others perceive me, and they're not perceiving me as, they're not looking at my failures as defining moments. They're looking at them with empathy. So I think that's how we get our best work done, is through being prepared to be vulnerable. On that note, on this, like, how do we get our best work done? I certainly don't want to emphasize the stay aspect of vet stay, go, diversify, as in as if you don't stay in general practice, then you failed. But there are those that would like to stay in practice, if only, and then fill in the blank. What do you think that if only is? Like, what could we do to facilitate more people staying? How could we encourage more people to stay in the profession?
What a great question. And I'll probably say some things and I'll miss a whole heap of other stuff. So for the listeners, please also add in the blanks as well, because I think this is actually the important part of this, if only, is that it's often got to be personalised. So if only we could encourage, more opportunities for flexible working, to allow those people on maternity and paternity leave to come back and operate in a way that suits them. I think flexibility is really important. It's not just for people with kids, it's for people with lots of different needs. I think if we can actually balance how much time we spend at work, I know that I am a better clinical vet if I work, 3 to 4 days a week and no more. I know I come in excited and energized to do my best work. So I think thinking about rota patterns and shift patterns, I think, is really important. I think other things, if only, it's kind of the basic stuff of any career. If only, people had more autonomy in the way they kind of run their clinics and run their days. I think that's usually quite important for people. Other things that come out as important in research is if only I had, clear opportunities for development, for my own personal and professional development in my workspace, and that is protected and encouraged. I think that's really important. If only I had clear opportunities for career progression as well. And career progression is not always linear, and it's not always up a ladder. Some of the best career progression opportunities I've had have been lateral, have been moving into different types of teams or locations. So I think progression looks different to different people. So I think that's another really important thing that we can consider as well. So they're just a few things that seem pretty simple when you say them out loud, but in practice, I know that the time constraints become a real problem. And I think other things as well, like it kind of fits slightly with the autonomy part, but also the ability to be creative, the ability not just to problem solve in a case, but the ability to be creative, innovative, and problem solve on a clinic level. And I think COVID has again shown that with the way people are using technology and using their car parks and using all sorts of things. So I think the ability and permission for individuals to be listened to, because it's not always your leaders or your corporations or your business owners that have the answers. It's often the people working at the very coalface that have the answers to the solutions to the problems that everyone is facing every day repeatedly.
I think you're right that the veterinary professions are just chock-a-block full of creative problem solvers, and how can we best unleash that creativity, which will be rewarding for them and everyone around them too. You mentioned two key factors there that we spend a lot of time thinking about at Pets App: flexibility and sort of control or autonomy. And it's been really interesting to me. We partner with veterinary practices and we provide the software, right? And so there's a little bit where we can sort of nudge them towards the use cases that we think are going to be productive for them. But a lot of the time we just sort of have to take a step back and watch how they use it. And when I first presented the app to a group of clinics, one of the vets came up to me and said, "Look, I hope this works, because I've just resigned because I don't feel like I can fulfill my duty as a vet and my duty as a member of my family, my home life, at the same time. I never get out on time. I just can't do it. I'm always letting someone down." And she saw how this technology could help with that, could help her have more balance. And you can think that there are people with a block of time, let's say 4 hours in their day, where they could be using their professional skills. They could be working as a vet, but who has a locum shift of 4 hours? And so can we create these more flexible, discrete opportunities to sort of deploy your professional expertise? And one story I heard was during COVID, there was a vet with disabled children who needed to shield, and she thought she was going to have to leave the profession. And instead, her employer had her on Pets App full time doing remote consultations. So it's been very heartening for me to see the sort of contribution that we've been able to play, but only through the creative use of the software on the part of the practices themselves. But the small part we've been able to play in helping people stay, I guess, and have more of the balance that they want.
And that, Thom, is like music to my ears. And I think I'm going to encourage you to share that in Vets Stay Go Diversify, actually. I'm going to encourage you to share those stories, because unfortunately, when we have these groups, as much as I love VSGD, I'm also aware that it's an echo chamber and a bubble. And unfortunately, Facebook algorithms are built to amplify anger and amplify challenge. And I think what we need to do as a profession is also to share what works. We need to almost stop complaining. It's important to share our problems, but we also need to try and share the solutions and the opportunities. And case studies like that go a long way to make other people think, oh, how can we do that? Then if they've managed to do it, then I can do it. And I think it's really important that we actually share what works. And it's interesting that you share those case studies, because we've just been supporting some recruitment for a new K9 kind of tele wellbeing service over in VSGD Careers, which is our career service function. And I wasn't sure whether it would be well received. I thought, oh, maybe people will tear it apart. Maybe people won't be interested. In under kind of 4 days, there was over 1,000 views, and we've had over 50 applicants apply for the roles. And reading their CVs and what they have to offer, I am astounded that they haven't been used flexibly in their own workplace. So again, it comes down to those case studies you just shared, Thom. So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for people to really flex their zone of genius and in a way that suits them.
Definitely, couldn't agree more. And for you, it seems the solution has been what you've termed a portfolio career. Just sort of as a final question or a final point, can you share with people what that is, what that looks like? Yeah,
so a portfolio career essentially is I work as a freelancer, and I split my time in a number of different avenues, working on different projects and with different teams. So I have a portfolio, or a collection of projects that I work on every week. And they've all people say, how'd you get into that? And I don't really know how. I didn't plan to do this. I very much, my whole career, just followed my nose on what I'm curious about, on what excites me, and listening to people. And if I hear a problem, I think I can solve that for you. So the way I kind of spend my days at the moment, or since COVID, is being very much supporting educational institutions and organizations, especially within their community development sections of what they do, and also supporting virtual events. So for both VSGD, but other people as well. So supporting people like Vet Times with VN Happy Hour, the Global Veterinary Careers Summit, the Big Student Careers Fair, Street Vet Conference, and things like that. And then also do a bit of writing and consulting for companies, and then still do my clinical equine work. So it's a real diverse kind of bucket, if you like, but they all center around a common theme, of community, really. All of them link back to how can I support this client with their community elements or their community features, be that through writing, events, education, you name it. So it's still a craft in progress, really, and it has upsides and it has downsides. And I think what's really important is sometimes people can hear someone else's career and go, oh my God, that sounds amazing, it sounds better than mine. But I think the trick is that the grass is not greener. There are always downsides to any job. There is no unicorn perfect role out there. And as much as I love doing my freelance work because it aligns with my very core value at work, which is creativity, it's hard. There's blurring lines between work and home because I'm a freelancer. I'm working from home anyway, regardless of the pandemic. Things like that can kind of get in the way. But it's been amazing to work within the vet sector. And more recently, I'm now working with WWF and Sky Ocean Rescue on their Ocean Hero campaign, and helping them build an amazing community of ocean lovers and goers and scientists and people who do beach cleans, to people who work in schools. And it's lovely to take the learnings of VSGD and help other communities and build other thriving communities where people can connect and support one another.
So awesome. And I think listeners will understand why I said you're more than halfway to having your 7 careers in one lifetime. They do say a change is as good as a rest, but I hope you take time to rest too, Ebony, because you sound incredibly busy.
So that's what 2021 is actually going to be about. I haven't, I realize that sometimes I preach to support people, and I don't always take the medicine myself. So I'm going to be taking quite a bit of time off in 2021 to do just that. And I reckon I'll probably end up one day, owning a horse trekking centre in southern Spain, I reckon, and living out my days like that. Because one thing I've definitely realised that I need is being outside in nature is important. And it can be annoyingly at the moment, it can be very easy to get caught in the riptide current of an online world when actually there's so much amazing stuff going on outside. And I'm now looking over my laptop screen over at the Conway Estuary, and it's getting really beautiful and wavy, and I'm thinking I just want to get out on my paddleboard. So yeah, but it's life is a balancing act, isn't it? Sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong, but all you can do is learn from the way you work, really, and just always ask yourself what's important.
I can confirm it's a very beautiful view. And I did read an article just recently in the Wall Street Journal saying that 2 hours outside each day is the new 10,000 steps. So I definitely think you're onto something. So that you can go and get your rest. To wrap up, where can people learn more? If they've heard about Vet Stay Go Diversify, or they want to hear more from you, where can they learn more? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, so if you are a veterinary professional, so a student, a nurse, a vet, then do join us over on Vets Stay Go Diversify, which is a Facebook group there. And we also have a website where we try and collate a lot of our summaries and videos, and that is www.vsgd.co. If you're looking for jobs that Stay Go Diversify, you have career opportunities that you want to share, then come over to VSGD Careers, which is a separate Facebook group. And that's really a space to find your next role. And then you can find me over on Instagram at Ebony Escalona, and the same is true of Facebook and Twitter as well. And then VSGD is also on all the social platforms at Vets SGD. I think that's right. And join us as well. The Global Veterinary Career Summit Mark II will be happening in October of this year. So we'd love to see people there as well, because I tell you what, the one thing I've realised about this year especially is like the world needs more empathetic, problem-solving, evidence-based workers who are full of compassion and grit and grace, and that is the vet profession the world over. So it warms my cockles when I don't only hear them doing their amazing things in the clinic, when I hear them, sitting in startups, sitting in research labs, sitting in the government, sitting in creative outlets. Like, the world needs more people like that, with the elements that the veterinary professional brings. That the world has so many issues right now, and I think veterinary professionals are well placed to support that healing of the world, I think.
What a wonderful note to end on. Thanks for coming on, Ebony.
Pleasure. Thank you, Thom.